Sox in the basement.
Well, it didn't get much better, did it, Ed? Didn't improve very much since the last time we spoke. What did I say? I don't want to go into opening day 1-5 or 0-6, and we're walking into opening day not only 1-5, but coming off of a 10-0 shellacking down in Miami. And I'm just so disappointed with the start of this. Look, I understand you're a young team. I get the White Sox are building. In fact, Scott Merkin's going to be on this show in just a little bit. We're going to ask him a bunch of questions about decisions that were made coming out of spring training, why certain moves are happening, when are we going to start seeing some accountability for some of the pitchers, some of the guys, some of the hitters. When do they start to worry about their jobs? How quick will that happen? And so I'm going to ask him a few questions about that. Also talk a little bit about his routine for opening day. He's been doing it for a long time. But, look, I understand that it's a rebuilding team or a team that's coming out of a rebuild or taking the next step or however you want to categorize this. But I was led to believe I was going to see better baseball. 20 strikeouts out of 27 outs to kick off the season, 10-0 in Game 6, 1-5 record, only 3 guys with on-base percentages over 300 currently on this team. Your starting pitcher, who was your ace, who came out of nowhere last year, is nowhere near that now. Terrible spring, 2 terrible starts. You're using an opener on opening day now with Grant Taylor coming out, a guy who a lot of people think should be a starting pitcher eventually in the rotation. You're going to use him as an opener for your home opener before Sean Burke goes out there. You're trying anything you can, but man, they got to get it together and get it together quick, don't they?
Well, and it's not just. I can forgive the hitters a little bit, okay? I mean, it's 6 games. You're coming out to start the season. It's a small sample size. They've shown some flashes. There have been some really good moments. There's some guys that look like they're doing better than I thought they were, like Pereira's doing better than I thought he was going to. But the pitching is what has disappointed the heck out of me, because not only has Shane Smith been objectively terrible, and you wonder what's wrong with him, right? You wonder where that's going. But also, you've seen some bad baseball. Like Eric Fetty's start should have been better, but the decisions being made defensively in the big inning against him are just awful. I mean, it's just an awful brand of defensive baseball that you're watching being played behind this guy. And we know who Eric Fetty is. Eric Fetty's a guy who is going to use the changeup and the sweeper to pitch to contact. And if you're lined up behind him correctly, and if you make solid defensive choices, yeah, he's going to give up a few hits and stuff like that, but you can get him out of innings very easily. They're not playing good baseball in any phase.
No. And the thing is,
the pitching is in particular is the thing that has me just sitting here going, who is this pitching coach that they hired? And why is he better than Ethan Katz if the entire pitching staff, which is largely from last year, looks so much worse? So much worse.
Yeah, things do not look good right now. And I remember listening to Bruce Levine, who I don't normally listen to very much, but he was on Chicago radio as I was driving around the other day. And he kind of said, well, what they need from Eric Fetty is, maybe give him 5 innings and only give up 3 runs. He did that. I mean, like he's really not expected to be an ace. He's really a 4th or 5th starter on a team where you're hoping that eventually young talent comes up from AAA and takes his job eventually. It's the defense. It's the hitting is poor. There's a lot of things to get into. First, let me mention our proud sponsors, Hyatt Home Medical Equipment. Switch to a new age of life. Keep mom and dad, grandma and grandpa out of assisted living and make it so they can get around on their own and live independently with Hyatt Home Medical Equipment. Stair lifts, ramps, grab bars, lift chairs, bathroom remodeling. They do so much. They work with your insurance. They have 0% financing for qualified individuals. And if you need a CPAP machine and are unhappy with your vendor, switch now. Get supplies directly mailed to you. On our last episode, if you looked at the YouTube feed, we actually filmed a little segment there announcing them as the new sponsors on the marquee of the show. And I showed a little video of how small some of these devices are. And we talked about how they're so portable. So if you are dealing with old technology, get new. Check out everything that Hyatt has to offer at hhme.com. And, I mentioned some of the stats. And like I said, Scott Merkin on here in just a few moments. And we got the Sox Nerd later on here in the show. So just a little bit of time with you. And if you're on the YouTube feed, Ed's there in video. Good to see you, bud.
I am.
Yeah.
Hi. Hi,
Yeah.
everybody.
You look a little thinner, and the voice isn't 100% back. Somebody asked me the other day about you, and I said, you know what? He's doing really good considering everything you went through. But he's still recovering. He's still moving. But you look better every time I talk to you. You sound better every time I talk to you, and that gives me hope. I have more hope in you than I have in this White Sox team. I have more hope in you than when I go through what.
Well, I'm not going to say no to that.
look at how bad a shape you're in, and I have more hope in you. I mean, look, Murakami, he's got a 1027 OPS. He starts off 3 games, 3 home runs. That's amazing. All right. He's also currently 5 for 21, hitting 238 at the plate. He still has a lot more adjusting that has to be done, but he gives you some power. That's great. Miguel Vargas. Wow, I didn't think I'd be starting off the year lauding Miguel Vargas at the plate. But before they get to their first home game, he's one of only 3 with an on-base percentage over 300 on this team. I'm sorry, 4. Chase Meidroth, I missed him. He has an on-base percentage over 300. It's Murakami, Vargas, Tristan Peters, and Meidroth, I believe, that are the guys that are getting on base. I guess if you really wanted to dip down and say Derek Hill with his 2 at-bats, but I don't think that qualifies in my conversation.
I'm not counting Derek Hill.
No, I'm not counting that. But you have Vargas up there right now hitting 263 with an 822 OPS, getting on base at a 348 clip. If somebody told me that's what you're going to get all year from Miguel Vargas, I'd be like, okay, cool, gotcha. That's what I mean. If I get that, I'm happy. He's one of the bright spots after me yelling about him for a year and a half. Tristan Peters is the guy out of nowhere who's performing really well early on. I know it's a small sample size, but everybody is not ready. Like, you had all of spring. You had all of spring training. You told us we're ready to hit the ground running. We have all this positivity. But what you have is a lot more hitters struggling than those that are ready. So I'm looking at all the guys that you've hired who are in charge of hitting and development, because it did not start out well. What were you doing down in spring training? Like you mentioned, you have pitchers that are not performing the way you wanted them to. You have a bullpen that is giving up runs and making it much, much harder on your team. There are so many problems walking out the gate. It's not like one problem. It's a lot of problems. What was going on in spring for the last 45 days? What are we going to do to fix this problem? And when I read the top prospects that you should be looking at if you're playing fantasy baseball, and Sammy Antonachi's listed this week on CBS's Fantasy Sports, like everybody else around the country is saying, hey, maybe it's time to inject something from AAA and bring it up here. And that's one of the questions I'll be asking Merk. How soon do you think we're going to see some adjustments? I feel like this team's so stubborn, they'll wait at least a month.
Yeah, well, and I mean, in the case of Sam Antonacci coming up, where are you going to play him? I mean, he's been dabbling in the outfield. Chase Meidroth, like you said, is one of the few guys that's actually somewhat performing.
Yeah.
You're not going to take Colson Montgomery out of lineup for Antonacci. And Miguel Vargas is performing. So really, you know, when I look at the hitters, what I think is happening here somewhat is guys can come out, they can do well in spring, they can be working on stuff, and then they can come out flat, or they can come out, you know, and try and prove something. I think Miguel Vargas is a guy that knows what he wants finally and knows what he wants to be, and he's performing how we want to perform. Murakami, like you said, he's got to make adjustments. I've liked the way he takes pitches. I've been more impressed by that. He doesn't seem to chase, but he's gonna have some growing pains, and we knew that. I'm not worried about him. Tristan Peters is playing like a guy who wants to belong in the major leagues and is trying to prove that one of those open outfield spots ought to be his, not Pereira's, you know, not Acuna's, but it should be his. He should be the starting center fielder of this team. And God bless him for going out there and doing everything he can. I don't know what his talent level is. I don't know if there's a cap on him to where we would sit there and say he's only ever going to be X. But frankly, at this point, if I'm Will Venable, if Tristan Peters is performing and trying and doing everything the right way for the most part, forgiving whatever the hell that was between him and Acuna in right field during the Fetty start, but then play that guy, okay? Play the guys that are working towards being here and being here every day, and I think good things will eventually happen on the hitting portion of it. The reason why I'm down on the pitching, the reason why I don't give those guys the same pass as the hitters, is because as a pitcher, you have scouted the team, you know exactly what you're supposed to do, you know how you're supposed to execute, and they're not doing it. They're leaving pitches out over the plate, they're walking guys. I mean, you can't make this up. I'm watching the game, and Jadixon Paez, who is no longer with the team, is being lauded by John Schifrin and Gordon Beckham for having outstanding control metrics as he's giving out a 4-pitch walk. I think it was a 4-pitch walk.
That's
but anyway,
bad.
He walked the guy.
That's bad.
As Schifrin's saying it.
Yeah, the booth is also bad, but there's nothing we can do about that till Schifrin's contract ends this year.
I'm not even faulting the booth. I'm just sitting there going, what else are they going to talk about with this guy? But whether it's something with the catchers behind the plate, Edgar Caro's not connecting, or Reese McGuire's not connecting with who's behind the plate, who's on the mound, or if it was something that the new pitching staff, coaching staff that is, it focused on in spring that worked against quad A players, but isn't working against major league players because there's a fault there. That's what I'm worried about. I'm worried that we're walking into a season, and what we're seeing is a pitching staff that is fringy at best, and we know this, and is not going to have the benefit of being well prepared. Okay, because that's what makes the difference. What takes Davis Martin from a 5-inning start where he gives up, I believe, 4 runs, right? Ultimately, what separates that from a Davis Martin start where he gives up 2 runs is preparedness. And that's defensive alignment for him. That is understanding who he's pitching to and how he executes. Martin should not be the only guy that's gone 5 innings in a White Sox start, right? And Fetty, going into Fetty's start, Fetty, like I said, needs the defense. I think Anthony Kane needs defense. His stuff is better than I thought it was, but I think he's going to need ultimately somebody behind him. Shane Smith needs to figure out what Shane Smith was last year and what works for him. And they need to get him right immediately, or they need to send him down. And if Sean Burke needs an opener at this point, then the Sean Burke experiment is failing, because, move on before it's too late.
All right, listen, get to soxinthebasement.com. Start voting right now. There's a header right at the top of the website to vote for the winner of the $1,000 guest bounty. Voting going on for the next week, and we will have a show that doesn't come out next Friday, but on that Saturday, in which we're going to be announcing the winner. And the show in between now and then next week that comes out on Tuesday is going to feature all of the guests that were part of it. So if you're not exactly sure who you want to vote for, or you want to hear it again, those guests will all be on the next episode of Sox in the Basement, but voting is open right now. And for exterior windows, doors, patio doors, and storm doors, look no further than Window and Door Superstore of Oak Forest. No high pressure sales, not in your kitchen. You're in their showroom with full examples and glass designs on display. Forget pictures in a book. See it in person. Owners in showroom and on site. All Window and Door Superstore installers, they do not farm out the work. They've been doing it that way in Oak Forest since 1985, with all major brands custom made and no stock items for a perfect fit. Window and Door Superstore of Oak Forest is a half block east of 159th and Ridgeland at 6280 159th Street. See more at windowdooroakforest.com. Before I go to Merk, again, the $1,000 guest bounty voting. $1,000 guest bounty brought to you by Cork and Carry at the Park. The voting is open. The big giant banners back out in front of the Cork for the season. And as this show comes out, it's opening day. Maybe they turn around, buddy. Maybe. I mean, what else am I going to watch for the next couple of days? Well, I'll actually be watching the Illini go for a national championship. But outside of that,
we'll do that too.
Please. I mean, they need to win for me this weekend just to keep me distracted for a little bit longer until Will Venable and his staff and Chris Getz figure out what they're going to do. Joining me on the phone line right now, our good friend Scott Merkin from MLB.com. How are you, Merk?
Good. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm good. How is spring? I haven't been in any warm weather yet. We've had a couple spotty days here in Chicago, but I haven't really gotten to enjoy sunshine like you probably got to.
It was sunny almost every day. It was also the last 4 or 5, maybe the last week. It was like 105 degrees to the point where I've never seen this happen before in the 23. I missed one spring, 24 years total. They moved a bunch of day games to night games because for the players' safety and the fans' safety, and I guess the media's in there somewhere too, safety. You couldn't play when it was 105 degrees. There was just no way. I mean, that's why the Arizona, Diamondbacks baseball stadium has a roof on it, right? That's why Las Vegas' stadium will have a roof on it, because you can't play out there when it's 105, 100. I don't totally get how they do like the Arizona Complex League during the summer. That must just be chaos if they ever play during the day. But they moved a bunch of games, including the spring breakout, including the Sunday home finale when Paul Konerko got inducted into the Cactus League Hall of Fame. They moved them all to night games, which is a little interesting. And they played only a couple day games, and somehow they got through it. But it was hotter than anything down there for that last week. It was crazy.
What is different about opening day covering it than the other games? Is it just like any other game? You just kind of ignore the pomp and circumstance? What's your normal opening day routine?
Yeah, I think you might get there a little earlier just because of the fact that I remember I got there very early. I got there like 8 a.m. for the Brewers opener. And I'll probably get there equally as early for not quite 8 because it's a 3 o'clock start, so it's scheduled for the Sox. But the Brewers were 1. But just more stuff's going on. I mean, let's face it. In the case of the Sox, where not taking anything away from those who ardently go out there all the time, that's great for them. That's awesome. But they're not drawing a ton of people throughout the season, but they will for opening day. So it'll be a little crazier. Can't just kind of, sneak into the parking lot the last second there. Not the last second, but, closer to when you need to arrive. And you also give yourself time to kind of enjoy the moment, right? It's cool. Everyone's waiting for it. Cactus League and spring training is great. It's an ends to a mean. It's a means to an end and ends to a mean. There you go. I just created a new saying. It's a means to an end, but I mean, no one ever got to the Hall of Fame based on hitting 400 in the Cactus League, right? That gets you to the majors. It gets you a chance to go. And it starts to count on opening day and now the home opener, and people wait for this all off season. They study the moves. They look at the Rule 5 editions. They look at who's ready from the minors, and now it's a chance to see him in action. So I think just coverage wise, there's more pomp and circumstance. There's more activity. There's a little more energy than, just even game 2 and 3 at home. I'm sure what we'll see Thursday, assuming the weather allows it, will be different from what we'll see Saturday and Sunday, and certainly what we'll see from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday against the Orioles. It's just a different, and it's kind of different, I think, in any sport, but maybe especially so baseball is such a huge schedule of 162 games.
Are they still trying to figure things out? I mean, they had the entirety of spring, and they got a good look at everybody there. But there's already been some transactions out of their bullpen. Like Paez has been designated now. He was one of your Rule 5 guys. Tyler Gilbert was on the team, and then they went back to Brian Hudson, who I think was part of the organization. They let go of. He went to another team. Now he's back, and Gilbert's down in the minors. They're already tweaking a week into the season. Are they and the lineups too? I mean, not to ask a really long-winded question here, but you look at the lineups. I've seen Miguel Vargas in 3 different spots. I've seen Colson Montgomery in a couple different spots. I see Acuna in the infield, Acuna in the outfield. Are they still testing what they have? What is, because it doesn't seem to me like they walked out the gate and they're like, this is it. This is our 26-man roster. This is our everyday lineup. It seems like they're still testing things. What do you see?
Yeah, such is the function of life in a rebuild, right? I mean, I'll give you a little thing. I think Hudson's nameplate was still there in the Camelback Ranch locker room when we got there. I think so. That's how close that he was still with the White Sox, and now he's back with them again. But yeah, I think it's going to be that way for a good portion of the season, right? I mean, they want to be successful. They want to take meaningful steps forward, as Chris Getz has now said, probably 4 or 5 times since the winter meetings. They haven't really set a win-loss total goal, so I think, that's not featured on the front of their prominence for this year. But yeah, I think they're going to try. They're going to try everything they can this year. They're going to do whatever they can, and that may mean having the roster very fluid. The Paez move is interesting because I guess I'm a little confused why you go after 2 guys in the Rule 5 who neither have pitched above high A and not expect what has kind of resulted to be the result, right? I mean, it's great to have talent. I mean, Paez throws 6 pitches. Alberto's got good stuff. That was Alexander Alberto, who, was sent back to the Rays, I believe, after he didn't make the team. But you got to figure that, at least Shane Smith and Mike Vasil both had AAA experience, right? They had AA and AAA experience and more than just a game or 2 here and there. So it's kind of an interesting call, and it's kind of interesting to me. And how they kind of let Paez go after 5 games. Now I get it. His stuff did not look major league ready. He was not missing a lot of bats, but maybe, let him go for a little bit and use him just solely in like that long relief role. This is just me spitfiring here. So, maybe he does not get sent back. Maybe he clears waivers and ends up somehow coming back to the White Sox, and you have a guy in your system you can develop a little bit. The whole Rule 5 rule is a little confounding to me to begin with. I mean, I saw a guy like Dylan Covey, who probably could have been a decent major leaguer, be forced to stay up on a roster where he wasn't ready yet for a whole year because of that rule. And again, it's no criticism of either of the teams that do it. It's just, I don't understand the whole thing. But anyways, it was an interesting approach to take, just as Rule 5s always are interesting approaches to take. But yeah, I think to make a long-winded answer short now, I basically think they're just going to be, they're going to be doing everything they can. That means, bunting, hit and running, playing matchups, playing, platoons, using the roster fluently, having some guy come up and some guy go down and that guy who went down come up a few weeks later. I think that's what they're going to do this year, because I think they're still trying to find out what they have. But, it would behoove them to move forward in the same way, too. And I know the players want to. I know the players are very confident in spring training that they could be better. It's been a rough start to the season, albeit a very small start in a 162-game season.
Let's talk about a Rule 5 guy from last year, Shane Smith, who had a rough spring and a rough opening day. And as this next month goes on, let's say he has 4 out of his 5 starts are brutal. And even though he was an all-star last year, now all of a sudden it's not happening for him. He's got options. They have so many guys down in AAA right now, so many young pitchers, so many guys that you're feeling like are eventually going to get here. Several of them might get here this year. How long of a leash does Smith or any of the pitchers have in this rotation?
Oh, I think they have, certainly a longer leash than Hedges and Paez did. I mean, I think also the key thing to remember on the young guys in, Charlotte, talking Noah Schultz, Tanner McDougal, and Hagen Smith, you're not going to rush those guys because something's not working at the major league level. They have to be ready to come up. The goal always is, when you have these guys come up, is you want to try not to have them go back down to the minors again, right? So I think, he'll get some room to work. There's no question these guys will get room to work. And, I don't put a lot of stock in Cactus League stuff. I mean, I remember there was a relief pitcher for the Cubs years ago who was a mainstay on the team, and I think it was Wade Davis, actually, who was, unbelievable for them in 2017. And one of his first Cactus League appearances, he got like 7 or 8 runs. And because he was working on just a certain pitch in a certain part of the zone and certain parts of the zone the whole time, so he didn't care about the results. Now, Shane probably isn't quite that accomplished at this point. And I think just with Shane, he's talked about just fastball command is the base set for him and pretty much any pitcher. And it's been a little bit off, but I think he'll be fine. And I don't think there'll be any kind of knee-jerk reaction. I mean, I know they have young guys ready to go, but again, they're not going to say, well, so-and-so isn't pitching well up here after a month or 5 weeks. Let's switch him out for, Noah Schultz, if Noah Schultz isn't ready to come up there. So I think the rotation is going to look different, by, June than it does now. The staff will look different by June than it does now. And maybe the whole roster will look different, but that's all part of the rebuild. That's all part of it. They probably don't like using the rebuild word anymore, but, until you really get in contention, that's what it is, right? You're still trying to build up to get to that point where you're consistent every year.
I heard a theory that's probably a crackpot theory, but I want to run it by you because we haven't talked since it happened. The idea that Corey Lee, like any athlete, would really want to make it on the team and compete for a job. But when you have Teal and Carroll, what happens if Edgar Carroll gets off to a really rough start? And it's very hard to move on and send Corey Lee or DFA him or whatever you're going to do when Teal comes back. So then they go out and they sign Reese McGuire because he's more expendable. You see Carroll off to a slow start, McGuire getting his first start in the last game of the Marlins series. Do you think any of that makes sense? Why did they move on from a guy that they already had in Lee to go out and spend over $1 million on McGuire?
I think they just thought McGuire at this point was a better roster fit. I mean, I like Corey Lee. Corey Lee earned a lot of respect from everyone involved, I think, with the way he comported himself in 24. I'm sure I'm leaving someone out, but it was basically, Corey and Garrett Crochet and Gavin Sheets, and I think Andrew Benintendi would be in that group, that were kind of the voice of just something no competitive athlete ever wants to go through, right? I mean, 121 losses, just a debacle from pretty much start to finish, and carried himself great, and actually had a pretty decent year. I think he's got the best arm of the 3 catchers down there. I mean, let's be honest, the Kyle Teal injury, well, it does not look like it's going to be long-term. It could be maybe in the next couple of weeks that he's back. That kind of changes things at the beginning too. But I just think they felt Reese McGuire's left-handed bat with a little more experience, was the better fit at this point. It was odd, the time that it happened. But again, I think you're talking more of a backup either way. Nothing against Corey or Reese, but they're not the featured guys. It's Teal and Caro. Reese and the pitching staff had a rough, outing. Was it Saturday, I want to say, when the Brewers went 7 for 7 in stolen bases there? And as one of the scouts pointed out to me, the Brewers kind of know Reese McGuire because he was in camp with them, right? So they know what they can and can't do. But it certainly was not all on Reese McGuire. It was a lot on, the pitchers too. And that's the one, probably disconcerting thing I would say for the Sox in the first week is just that, they focus so much on the precision of things, on doing things right, on, right defensively, being aggressive, taking the extra base, not making mistakes. And that's been kind of prevalent the first, 5 games as we're talking. Now, the thing I will say, that their early schedule is not exactly, you got to play them at some point, right? But they start with 3 in Milwaukee, who's probably the favorite to win the NL Central again. 3 in Florida, who's a very good team, very talented young team. Kind of what the Sox fans hope the Sox get to this year, what the Marlins were last year. That, whether that's a little high hope or not, we'll see. Then you have the defending AL champions who were 2 outs away from winning the World Series, coming in for the home opener, followed by Baltimore, followed by 4 in Kansas City, where they never play well, whether they're good, bad, or otherwise. So it's an interesting start for them, and they may be looking to kind of get through that start, kind of not bury themselves in that start and then see what you can do from there. Although no team ever thinks, well, we're going to get buried, but give themselves every competitive edge they have to be successful during that kind of tough start.
Good catch on the McGuire thing too, Merk. I forgot that he started game 2 of the season.
Oh,
that was perfect because I totally missed that. Before I let you go, back to that though, real quick. When Teal comes back, what do they do with McGuire? Are they going to keep 3 catchers?
It's interesting. Chris made it pretty clear that when he talked to us, I guess it would have been when Teal came back when he got hurt. I think right after he came back and was left Team Italy where he played so well there. Chris said he does not want 3 catchers in the roster, and I think Will's in conjunction with him on that. So I don't know. We'll see what happens at that point. We'll see if it changes at that point. We'll see how close Teal is to coming back, but it'll be interesting. And Corey ended up clearing waivers, but I think some in the organization thought he would not. So it's interesting that. But again, at the end of spring, where like you were just saying, rosters are pretty well set. There's not a lot of teams probably looking for catchers at that point. So, it's kind of tough to get to hook on there, but he's down back at Charlotte now. He officially joined the roster. So, and they were very high. They liked Drew Romo when he did too. So they're loaded with catchers, which I know Chris loves. Chris is very big on being strong up the middle of the diamond and, considers catching gold. So, we'll see what happens. There's a lot of options there, but Teal and Caro are 1 and 1A in that catching situation for the White Sox.
All right, that's Scott Merkin. He's from MLB.com. He covers the White Sox like a glove, and I look forward to a possible U of I, U of M national championship. What do you think, Mark?
Oh, that would be, 1989 Final Four, that was about as great. I actually just ran into Stephen Bardo the other day, who was walking. I saw him walking and talked to him a little bit about, I believe he was part of that 89 game. I want to say I always get this number wrong, but I think there were like 14 guys who played in that Michigan 1989, Michigan-Illinois 1989 Final Four game that ended up playing in the NBA. And I'm talking like from 6 games to like a 19-year career. So, that's pretty amazing. That I still think people don't talk about it enough. One of the best Final Four games I've ever watched in my life. So, yeah, it would be interesting. I grew up, loving U of I. I remember U of I beating Magic Johnson the year they won the title to go to number 1 in the country. And, being so excited with my brothers watching it. And now, of course, it's a rivalry. I don't want them to win it all. I want Michigan to win it all. And I think it'd be easy if it was Michigan, UConn, no offense to U of I. If it was Michigan, U of I, and I knew, and someone guaranteed me Michigan was going to win, I'd take that too. Just as long as Michigan's cutting down the nets on Monday night, I'm happy with whoever they play.
All right. Well, I want revenge in the exact opposite of you, Merk, but good luck this weekend.
No, we'll see who comes out. And I'll tell you what, Michigan, Arizona is going to be a battle. nothing against U of I or Duke or UConn, but those are, basically the two best teams from start to finish this year, right? They were
I believe
number
you on
one
that
for
one.
most of the year. So
I'm glad you're facing each other before we can get to you. I'm glad that that's happening.
Yeah, it is strange. I mean, people say like that should be the championship, but whatever. You got to play them at some point either way, right? So it doesn't matter if it's a championship or Final Four.
Thanks so much, Merk.
Okay, Chris, take care.
That music means the Sox Nerd. Dave Marin is on the line right now with trivia nuggets and tidbits that he would normally just put up for the folks at the rate, but he brings those and much more to Sox in the Basement each and every week. And he's brought to you by the Village of Lamont. Want to experience a downtown with real history, great eats and drinks, and green spaces filled with adventure? Visit the Village of Lamont. Shop, dine, drink, explore, see everything they have going on this weekend and beyond. Always a festival coming up. See it all at lamontdowntown.com. Nerd, what do you got for me?
Chris, leading off, a White Sox stumper and one of my favorite trivia questions. Who was the Sox starting third baseman in the 2000 home opener? Let's get to the nuggets, shall we? Of course I have a log of postponed White Sox openers and home openers. Come on, I'm the Sox Nerd. By my count, Thursday was the 21st time the Sox had their home opener postponed, with the most recent coming in 2020 because of the shutdown. The most recent weather-related postponement came in 2019 when the Sox took advantage of the built-in off day on the schedule to make up the game. Thursday marked the 6th time the opener in the Sox current home was delayed. The first one came in 1995, and that was due to the players' strike. Labor issues also delayed the 1972 and 1990 home openers. The first Sox home premiere to get called off came in 1903. Rain put the originally scheduled April 30th opener against Detroit at Southside Park on hold for one day. 1982 was the craziest year for this. The Sox home opener, which was also the season opener, was scheduled for April 6th against Boston, but a massive snowstorm wreaked havoc on the schedule, stretching all the way to the East Coast. The Sox didn't open 1982 until April 11th, and that was with a doubleheader at Yankee Stadium, prompted by another postponement. The home opener didn't occur until April 16th, with another doubleheader, prompted by another postponement. That's enough about the weather. I record this on Thursday morning, praying to Sox God and Bob from Dalton for good weather for Friday's home opener. Moving on, I felt challenged by the Sox recent flurry of grand slams. To refresh, Colson Montgomery and Miguel Vargas each hit a bases-loaded homer, with Montgomery's coming on Sunday in Milwaukee and Vargas's occurring on Monday in Miami. These were the first grand slams in back-to-back games ever in March, and the Sox first in consecutive games since June of 2006, when they did it in 3 straight tilts against the Astros in a 2005 World Series rematch in Chicago. Back then, Scott Pasednik, Joe Crede, and Tadahito Iguchi hit the slams. The other times this happened was on May 18th and 19th, 1996, when Ray Durham and Robin Ventura did it in Detroit, and on June 8th and 9th, 1984, when Greg the Bull Luzinski did it all by himself. Before I get to my stumper answer and zinger, let me remind you that gems like these and others are available on my blog, which you can access at soxinthebasement.com. I am also posting daily on X and Threads. Paul Konerko is my stumper answer. After Paulie made the start in the 2000 home opener at the Hot Corner, he would play only 4 more games there the rest of his career, and they were all in 2000. My zinger? With his first big league homer, Munetaka Murakami became the 700th player to go deep for the White Sox. The first to touch him all for the Sox was Frank Shugart on April 29th, 1901. That's it, Chris. Probably more than you wanted to know about the weather, slams, and the Hot Corner.
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always on soxinthebasement.com.